Hey everyone, welcome back to Taking Back Monday. I am so excited that you decided to say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to a brand new future of work. And I'm even more excited to introduce you to our guest today. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So we were kind of chatting in the beginning about, your background. You've done podcasts before, you do a lot of other people's podcasts. What I really want to know is what is your origin story? How did you get here?
So I love that question because it's the basis for what I do today. So I spent 20 years in law enforcement, and in that time in law enforcement, I was a hostage negotiator, I was a media relations officer, I was teaching the DARE program, I was teaching our Citizens Police Academy, and it dawned on me about halfway through my career that I was communicating for a living. I was just wearing a police uniform to do it. And I was also that guy when I was on patrol that would talk my way out of any potential resistance and fight. Like, I can take you to the ground, I just don't want to. I would much rather talk you out of it. And I think even further than that, I was a middle child of 3 boys. And so the middle kid is the peacemaker. Like, my older brother, my younger brother, never been wrong about anything in their life, and quite frankly, I don't care. I'm just gonna broker the peace. So that's kind of when I realized that in law enforcement. I also realized that I could retire at 43 because it was a 20-year hazardous duty retirement because I started at 23. And I knew the public pension was a nice safety net, but it wasn't something to build a life on. And so about 8 years left before retirement, I started speaking professionally at conferences that I was already attending. And that turned into those people that were there said, "Hey, would you come train our staff? Or would you come do a program for our students?" And that's where the speaking business started with 8 years left into retirement. And when I retired, I was able to step directly into the speaking and coaching business without really missing a beat because I had 8 years to get that boat close enough to the dock to where I could step onto it. So I was running to a new career instead of running from my past career just in the communication world because I learned early on the power of communication. My favorite movie as a kid is Dead Poets Society because that shows the
Oh,
power.
Captain, my Captain. Yes.
Oh, that movie gives me chills, Alyssa. Like, and the thing is, like, when I showed it to my wife and daughters who are grown now, like, they were like, "Meh." And I'm like, "How can you meh this movie?" And my wife said, "I think it's a boy coming of age movie." Maybe. But to me, it showed the power of your words to influence and change people's lives. And so I think that's largely the origin was back as the middle boy of 3 sons and the Dead Poets Society and then the police world set me up for the career that I'm doing today, and I freaking love it. Like, being on stage, connecting with people is my happy place.
I haven't thought about that movie honestly in years. I think I watched it. We watched it as part of a literature class, I believe, in like school.
Yeah.
And now that I'm thinking about it, it's one of the best examples of leadership, right? Because
Yes.
the main character is meeting those students where they are. We're not going to call it, early English literature. We're going to call it the Dead Poet Society. We're going to put a name on it that you can resonate with, that piques your interest as the group of people I'm supposed to lead. And instead of just saying, "Hey, I'm the teacher, you're the students, you're going to do it my way," he met them where they are. And
Yes.
and that is the truest example of incredible leadership.
Yeah, and the way he reached every individual student with what they needed, and they would laugh at their peer who needed more than they did until he isolated that peer and brought them into it, and then everybody got it. Like, that kid just needed to see it a different way, hear it a different way, and to me, it was a game changer to show the power of influence with our words. Because as I said, physically, I'm very capable. I learned that in the police world. I don't wanna resort to physical. I would much rather teach you, motivate you, change your behavior with my words.
Well, it's more likely to stick too, right? Like if I throw you down, you're gonna get back up eventually. If I de-escalate the situation with my words and I build that rapport,
For sure.
then like we're just not gonna have this repeat of this situation.
For sure, and the hostage negotiator, the thing I loved about that part of my job was I needed you to do what I needed you to do, but I needed you to believe it was your idea, because then you have ownership of it, and today in the business world, that's huge. Like, I need you to do what's going to make us successful as a company, as your leader, but I need you to own it like it's your own. And so that only happens when I ask good questions, when I understand what your motivations are, when I know what your wins are, And as a negotiator, if I could get a resolution that allowed them to check as many win boxes as possible, they're going to pick that option. And it sounds manipulative to say, get you to do what I need you to do. But if what I need you to do is in your best interests, then I'm doing you a service, a favor
Mhm.
by getting you to select that choice, if that makes sense. Like as a negotiator, I wanted you and everybody in there to come out alive. You were too emotional to understand that at the time, but that was my aim. And if I can successfully do that, we all win. In the business world, if I can make you successful in your job, we both win. You may get promoted, you may get a bonus, and I, as your leader, get to share in that and help you achieve more. And if that promotes you off my team, then I'm going to celebrate with you.
The interesting thing that you're talking about here is I think a lot of us as leaders sometimes conflate position and our ability to communicate with the fact that we're just like megaphoning people, right? I'm
Mhm.
just telling you, it's a one-way street. I am broadcasting the communication and not accepting the communication in return. So,
Yes.
how do you coach leaders or businesses or people who want to be better communicators to listen as much as they speak?
So I love that question because that's the secret sauce. So I always tell people silence without rapport feels like we don't care. That's the key in business today. If you are silent and there's an issue, I'm going to start looking for a new job if I'm a team member, or I'm going to choose a new place to do my business if I'm a client or a customer. Like I know there's an issue and you're not talking about it. Silence is killing me. But if I have a level of rapport with you, it might support a short type of silence. Like when my wife and I are on a road trip, it might be an hour, neither one of us says a word. But we've been married for 28 years and we have thousands of hours of communication that'll support that level of silence. So to answer your question, when we were looking for a new hostage negotiator, we weren't looking for the officer who was a good talker. We were looking for the officer who was a good listener,
Mhm.
because I've never talked anybody into doing anything, but I've listened a lot of people into doing what I need them to do, right? And so as a corporate executive, as a leader today, that's the one pushback I hear when I go in and train teams is they say, "Scott, I don't have that kind of time. I don't have the time to really listen. Like I know what the solution is. I'm just going to give it to them and turn them loose." I'm like, "Okay, that may be true, but if you don't have the time to listen today, then make time in the future for this same problem to keep coming up." Because if you don't get to the root of the problem today, you are band-aiding it, and it will crop up again because you didn't address it. So you can invest time today and connect with your team and build a level of rapport that will get you through the difficult situations later on because they at least know you care. If they don't feel like you care because you've never taken the time to listen to them at the first issue, first crisis that comes up, they're out. But if you are a good listener and you have listened to them uh, periodically, they'll run through walls for you because they just know that you care.
To come back to almost the movie theme, and I'm gonna blank on what it is. But there was a quote that has always stuck with me, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but it's like an older gentleman yelling at a boy, like, "You are you listening to me?" You know, and the boy goes, "I hear you." And what
Yes.
he means is, "I'm not listening to you, but I do hear you." And I
Yes.
think that is a huge that stuck with me. I don't even know what movie it was, but that scene has stuck with me because there's a huge difference between hearing people, which is a passive, I'm not really absorbing what you're saying kind of
Mhm.
phrase,
Yes.
and listening to people. You
Yes.
might, if you're wasting your time just hearing people and you're not listening to people, then you are really wasting your time.
And theirs. And it feels like you don't care. That's the thing. The silence without rapport feels like we don't care. I had a law enforcement leadership instructor years ago when I became a sergeant. He told me, he said, listen to your people. They'll tell you everything you need to know. And I've never forgotten that. Like if you genuinely listen and you have your finger on the pulse of your team, those are the things that bond people together. And today, let's be honest, we can't pay people what they could make someplace else. But I tell people all the time, I don't care if you're paying somebody $1 million a year. If you have a toxic culture, they'll find another place to be. And if you're paying somebody a little bit less than, let's say, they could make down the street, but you have an amazing culture, they will love coming to work every day because they feel like this is a place that knows me, that accepts me, that I matter, and we're running towards the same thing. Now, this is not an excuse to pay people less, but let's be honest, there's always a job that pays more. If they're looking, they'll find that job, but they'll only be looking if you've not taken the time to listen to them, connect with them. If you do all those things, they're not even looking because these are my people and this is where I belong.
I want to dive into the idea a little bit. Like, okay, so you come to me with a problem.
Yes.
I'm your leader and I listen to you. But unfortunately, you're not going to like the answer, right?
Okay.
Because sometimes, you do have a problem and you're not going to like the solution. Like I do this with my 6-year-old. Like, yes, I hear you. I understand that you don't want to go to bedtime. I do agree with you that bedtime is the worst. However, the right thing to do is to go to bed.
Mhm.
I think that there is a process by which we build trust with our team, we build rapport. But I also think leaders have to do a better job of communicating the intent behind their decision making, right? So you come to me with a problem, I give you an answer you don't like. It can't just be like, and I'm the boss, so there's my answer. So how
Right.
do you communicate the underlying reason that maybe doesn't make sense if they don't have the context you have as the leader?
So it depends. There's a sliding scale on this. In the law enforcement world, we were taught to follow orders, right? Because seconds matter. So I need you to do this and I need you to do it without question and you
Right.
do
And
that.
not overthink it. Just do it.
Correct. Just
Right.
do it. But sometimes after the fact, we need to come back and explain that thought process so that they have a context for the next time. Like, I need you to do it in the moment. Later on, once the crisis is over, we'll do a debrief and we'll talk about why we made that decision. So, in the business world, we're not always making life and death decisions, right? It's different than the law enforcement world. But if you have to, as a leader, I tell people you're paid to say no. That's your job. Anybody can say yes. A bad leader says yes all the time, right? A good leader says no, but in a way that your team understands, right? And so sometimes I tell leaders that it doesn't always work with a 6-year-old, unfortunately, because their prefrontal cortex isn't developed enough to understand this. But with a team, it's easy to say, listen, I want to discuss this with you. I always say discuss one-on-one, correct individually, praise in public. That's what we do. So we pull somebody aside and I just tell people to call it out in the beginning. Say, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation. This is going to be an awkward conversation, but I want you to be successful here. I think you have a lot of potential. And in order for you to be successful, we need you to do this, this, and this, right? You phrase that in a way that if you do these things, you're going to be successful here. And that's genuinely what I want as your leader. I want you to be successful. You're not a threat to me. Your success is my success. And I genuinely want to see you even outgrow my team. If that happens, I'm going to celebrate that with you. If you start the conversation that way, they become less defensive and it's not seen as an attack. And I even tell people, I want this to be a productive conversation. So if I say something offensive, please let me know. I'm not trying to offend. If you say something offensive, I'll extend you the same courtesy, right? I'll say, we can't talk about that, or please don't use those words with me, or something like that, so that we get better at the end of it. That's what we want at the end of this. We want both of us to leave this conversation better than we came to it. Now, they may not understand that as they leave the conversation. It's the next day when their emotions have come back down that they're like, you know what? They didn't have to have that conversation with me. They did. And that's a cool thing. Like, they did that to make me better. In the moment, I felt defensive and I felt like I was being attacked. But the way they left the conversation was, if I can do anything else to help you, please come let me know. You can do this. You're very capable. And I want nothing more than to see you succeed. If that's how you leave the conversation, when they settle down, they'll realize I've never had a boss care enough about me to have an uncomfortable conversation with me. Because that's what we need to do, is we need to have uncomfortable conversations. The opposite that I see with a lot of organizations is you have leaders who say, well, I don't want to micromanage. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to bring it up. And they don't course correct their team. To me, that's the meanest thing you can do. You see somebody doing something that's going to cause harm to them or the company, and because you want to be their friend, you don't correct them. To me, the people I love the most in this world love me enough to correct me when I need it. The people who don't care about me will let me continue down a horrible path.
The and there's a little bit of I agree with everything you're saying. There's a little bit of skepticism though, because I've had bosses that aren't correcting me from a place of love and like
Yes,
growth. They're correcting me from a place of I'm the boss, you're the employee, and I need to take you down a peg. And
correct.
so, in order for that to work, though, you really have to build. I'll come back to this word rapport.
Hmm.
You really have to build that rapport.
Yeah.
What is the cheat sheet? What is the hack? How can I get started on building rapport with my team that allows me to create an environment that's psychologically safe enough for me
Mhm.
to hold them accountable?
I think the secret way to build rapport is to listen, to ask good questions. As a leader, we feel like we should be the ones talking. I think the best leaders say very little. They just ask good questions and they listen to the answers. So if I am your leader and I know what you value, whether that's your kids, whether that's your good name, whether that's your skills in this area, and I know that's important to you, then I know how best to motivate you, right? And you come to me and you say, I'm really having a hard day. Yeah, I see that. Um, has your kid ever had a hard day? How do you help them through that? Like you reframe it in a way that puts what they value in the forefront. And I think you're always going to have bosses who have bad intentions or they don't care. That's when it's hard as a direct report for me, because then you kind of have to lead up and you have to do the best you can in that situation and understand this person, if that's the way they are, they're probably not going to be your leader for long, because they will self-select out or the company will find someplace else for them to be. You've just got to do your job, be respectful of people even when they don't respect you, and do the best you can until that person either leaves on their own or they find another place for them in the company. I don't know if
I
that answers your question or not, but those are
It
my
does.
thoughts.
It does. My one of my friends owns a software business, a website business. They build digital marketing websites and stuff like that. And when we start businesses, the first thing you do is like set your core values, right? And for some people, those are words on a wall.
Right.
But as you were talking, I was thinking back to he has one core value for his company, and it's give a damn. Give a
Yeah.
damn about your customers, give a damn about your employees, give a damn about your work. And I'm like, that is the best core value I've ever heard because it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you just care about your team as people beyond assets on your org chart
Hmm.
and see them as people. I work from home though. That's really hard to do. Like all of our meetings are so tactical.
Yes.
So for this post-COVID remote world, how do you build rapport when all we have is a Zoom conversation?
That's really hard. I'm a fan of Zoom when we can't get together. I am not a fan of Zoom when we can. So the across the room office Zooms make me insane. Go to the conference room, get together, because there's a difference when we breathe the same air. There's a vibe that we get when we're in the same room. If you can't do that, um, it's difficult to make those connections because once the Zoom call's over, I'm out. If we're in the conference room, once the meeting's over, I may hang out for another couple of minutes while you talk about your weekend or you talk about your kid's soccer game or
Right.
whatever it is. And those are connections that can't be replicated on Zoom. So I feel bad for this newest working generation because that's really all they've known. If they entered the workforce around 2020, they've had 5 years of virtual. And I heard a young lady in a coffee shop say to her friend, she said, I have to go to Florida for a meeting, and it makes me so mad because this could have been a Zoom call. And I'm like, first off, we live in Kentucky. If you're going to Florida, how mad can you be, right? You're going to Florida, right? But I'm not mad at her because that's all she's ever known.
Right.
She doesn't understand when we get in the same room, it's the ride in the elevator, it's the lunch that we shared, it's the drink we shared after the meeting where we really connect and things change. Because now I get to know you. You're not just a face in a box.
The other thing I think we're losing in this, and not to be like that generation, the next generation.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, so I've been living that my whole life. But there's also what I call like bullpen osmosis that you're missing, right? So if you work in like an open environment, you work in a cubicle. Nobody loves cubicles, but you do pick up things that you wouldn't pick up otherwise. So if someone asks me a question, and we used to have a bullpen where I worked, if someone asks me a question and I shout the answer across the bullpen, you heard the question and the answer without having to be a part of the one-on-one conversation. So you pick up things simply by being in the room.
Yes.
And that we have lost too. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of knowledge transfer issues
Yep.
in the coming years as people move up the ranks because they're going to miss out on all of that like absorption of knowledge and they're going to have to actively learn it. And they
Mhm.
just maybe don't even know that they should.
Yes. And creativity is a team sport. And it doesn't mean the creative team. It could mean the finance guy sitting there with
Mm-hmm.
his cup of coffee while you talk about creative things. He's like, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
And you never thought of that because you're inside the bottle. He's
My
not in
my
the
husband's a CPA and I run creative stuff by him all the time and he has
Yes.
good things because he's an outside perspective.
Yes. We can't read the label from inside the bottle. And you miss that when you're not in the team environment.
Mm-hmm.
And, I also work from home now. This is the home office, but at least one day a week, I'm in a coffee shop because I need to be around the people, even if that means I have headphones in. And I only have headphones in if the conversation next to me is way too juicy. Like I'm invested in whether or not they're going to get together at the end of this or not. Like I'm such a people person that I'm distracted by that. So I have to put the headphones in. But I wrote my book in a dozen coffee shops
Mm-hmm.
because I'm productive when I'm around the hustle and bustle, even if I'm not participating in the conversations. Now, the extrovert in me is waiting for somebody to come and sit at my table and talk to me. Like that's one of the reasons I'm in the coffee shop. But I also literally need the people to be more productive and to feed off their energy when I can't produce my own, if that makes sense.
100% makes sense to me because I just started a monthly coffee meetup of local business owners, leaders, or people who are just interested in meeting other people.
Mhm.
And almost exclusively the attendees are people who work from home,
Yep.
who need a reason to see real people in the real world.
Yes.
And that isn't related to a youth sporting event or something like that. And so I was blown away by people who wanted to come to this simply because they wanted to see people and be in the real world for an hour. And like, don't get me wrong, I don't think I could work in an office again. I do love working from home,
Mhm.
but there are times where I'm like, should I just go rent like a co-working desk and see if I can, go do that for a little bit because I needed that space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get that. I don't think I would wanna be 40 hours a week in an office, but I think there is some synergy that we miss when we're not that,
Yeah.
and the co-working desk to me doesn't appeal because I can buy a lot of coffee for what a co-working space costs, and I can work in different coffee shops all the time because not only am I an extrovert, I tend to be ADHD, and so the same environment all the time,
Yeah.
a little boring.
Yeah.
And so I really geek out when a new coffee shop opens and I go and I'm like, yeah, this is either my vibe or it's not. And I'll be honest with you, I like my coffee shops dark and brooding.
Yeah.
Like I don't like the bright, airy, cheery music type place. I need a dark and brooding coffee shop to do the kind of work I
Give me
like.
some lo-fi music and
Yes.
dark
Yes.
wood. So for our coffee meetup, we're actually just going to a different coffee shop every time. So
Love
it changes. We're rotating to local coffee shops.
Yep.
I could literally talk to you all day, but we are running out of time.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, when you think about all of the people that you have had a chance to meet
Mhm.
or that you know or that you aspire to know,
Yeah.
who is leading the charge? Who is taking back Monday?
So I'm a huge fan of John Acuff. I don't know if you know John or not. He's a speaker and an author, and I met him for coffee one time, even though we weren't friends. We're best friends now. That's what I tell people. Like, I'm best friends with this guy who's making 30 to 50K each keynote he does,
Yeah.
right? We're best friends. But what I love about him is the books he writes and the way he speaks. He puts the cookies on the bottom shelf. Like, there's no big words, there's a lot of humor. Because what I learned in the speaking world is, and the writing world is when I can tie my principles to an emotion. For him, it's humor, right? For me, if you're in one of my keynotes, you're going to shed a tear, which sounds manipulative, right? But what I'm actually doing is giving you the best chance of remembering the communication content that I'm teaching because your brain stores it in a different file when it triggers an emotion. So he does that through humor. I do that with a little bit of humor, but also some poignant stories. And I'm going to his event in April. He's hosting his first event, and I can't wait to reconnect with my best friend, John Acuff.
I'm gonna follow up on that really quick. I just had this conversation this morning about the fact that we as people like to think of ourselves as rational creatures. We're logic driven and decision We make decisions based on facts. We are not.
No.
Every decision we make is emotional,
Yep.
and we rationalize with facts after the fact. So,
Yes.
to your point, like using humor and using emotion and that human connection to drive home factual points,
Yes.
that's rooted in science. It's
It
not
is.
even just manipulative. So,
And the people who are very fact driven, your husband being in the accounting world or in the, actuarial world, whatever,
yeah,
even that type of person will pile up enough facts until they feel comfortable making the decision.
yeah,
It's a feeling, it's an emotion. And
yeah.
they would argue with me, and I'm like, "You can argue with me all you want, but it is an emotional decision every time you buy or do business with somebody."
Exactly, exactly. Scott, if someone is really connecting with you, if they want to learn more, if they want to, become your new best friend, where can they find you online?
They can find me at speakingofharvey.com. There's links to all my socials at the bottom of that website, but they can also email me directly, scott@speakingofharvey.com. As an extrovert, I answer all of my emails. I know there are VAs who would do that for me, but I just love connecting with people. So
Yeah, come
even if
sit
it's
at
just a
Scott's coffee
question.
shop table, right? Come sit down at
Yes.
the shop table with him.
If you are local, we will not communicate through email. We will go and get coffee somewhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking back Monday with me. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Taking Back Monday, where we say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to meaningful and fulfilling work. If you enjoyed today's episode, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you found value here, share the podcast with your network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us inspire more leaders to join the movement. Until next time, let's take back Monday.